Hi, everyone. It's time for another team training session for the Oklahoma Housing Needs Assessment. And today we're going to be discussing GIS Symbology. So this is part of our series looking at the prototype model flowchart, where we're focusing on getting proficient with the GIS software. So I'm going to switch over here to ArcMap. So if you want to follow along, you can start up ArcMap. And I'm pulled up some getting to know ArcGIS data for this exercise. So again, we're using data that's already been created for us by somebody else, and we're manipulating the symbology of the map to tell a story, to sort of show and exhibit the data and represent the data on the map in different ways. So to do that, we might want to change the symbols that we use, the colors that we use, the backgrounds that we use, all the different symbology. So for this exercise, we're going to create a series of maps to create an atlas of the African continent. And to begin with, we have a very simple map here that has one data frame, major cities, and two layers or feature classes, cities and countries. And so to begin with, I'm going to just modify the countries layer, which is a polygon layer. And you can see here that there's a little symbol underneath the name of the feature class in the table of contents. I can double click on that with my mouse, and it brings up the symbol selector. And so for a polygon layer, you can change the type of symbol. You can click here in this box, or you can modify the current symbol. So like if I want to change the fill color, I can hit this little drop down arrow and you'll get this little palette. And there's more colors here, but more often than not, you can find what you're looking for here. I'm going to pick one here. If I put my mouse over it, it gives a color for it. So I'm going to pick this Sahara sand here. And then for the outline color, I'm going to go with maybe like a 70% gray, and hit OK there. And you can see it modifies the symbology. I can do the same thing with the cities layer. And so I'm going to change the symbol here from just this tiny little rhombus here to this circle 2 symbol. But I don't like the color. I think I'm going to kind of go here with maybe a coral color and get it down to maybe about 10 size. And it is showing the symbol here sort of proportionally. So if I hit OK there, now you can see that those symbols for the different capitals have been changed. If I right click on cities, I can also turn on the labels and label the features. And then lastly for this map, I just want to change the data frame background. So you right click somewhere in the white area here in the data frame, and we'll get a context menu that shows the data frame properties. We bring that up, and you can change many things about the data frame. You just want to click on the frame tab here. If you want to change the background, we get a little drop down here, and you can see, oh, there's lots of different options here. So maybe a light blue color. And I got a little warning there. It doesn't really matter. I ignored that. And then you can look and say, okay, that's a nice, pleasing contrast. And I hit OK there. And so now we've got a little map that shows the major cities in Africa. So that's sort of your most basic way to modify the symbology, but there's many more advanced ways that we're going to explore here. So, I'm going to open up the next exercise in this series. And what you're going to see here is it opens up in layout view. So I had just one data frame in the previous exercise, but now I've got countries and rivers. So I've got 3 different data frames here, and you can see them in the table of contents. And when they're selected, they show up here as a bold font. And so if I click my data view over here, either down here or up in the view menu, it will switch me to the active data frame. And in this case, we have the country's data frame and then the country's layer. And what I want to do here is try to make sort of a political map. And so if I right click there, and I'm going to hit properties, and it comes up and it shows like the features as a symbol, a single symbol. And that's what we were dealing with in the previous map exercise. But now we want to click on categories and we say, okay, well, there's a value field. And so the attribute table for countries has a bunch of values, including the name of the country, its area, and some population statistics. I'm just going to select a name for this exercise and hit add all values. And so you can see all of the different countries are now listed and they've been given a unique value. And it's important to remember that the value is assigned randomly from this color ramp here. And I can change the color maps. So I want to use a pastel color map, I can select it. If I want to use a grayscale, right? You get the idea. You can select many of them. You can also right click right on the color map, turn off the graphic view, and it'll tell you the name of the color map. So you can select by the name, or you can select by visually looking at the graphic view. Let's hit apply here. And you can see that it assigns these values to the map. And over in the table of contents, it shows them all. Now you can click on one and you'll be able to edit it. So like if we wanted to change Algeria, to like a bright red so that it would stand out, there you have it, right? So you can edit all these. If you don't want to look at them all, you just hit the little minus sign and it'll roll them all up. They're all there, but they're just not taking up room in the table of contents for you. We can also label these just again by hitting label features. If we go back to our layout view, now you can see we've created another map in our atlas. This time it's more of a political map for the continent. Now I'm going to activate the rivers layer. I'm going to right click on it, say activate, click data view. And so now we have a map that shows the major rivers. And I'm going to hit the little plus sign. You can see we have the country feature class layer and the rivers feature class. If I right click on rivers and hit open attribute table, you'll see that this is a polyline feature. It's got a bunch of lines. Each one represents one of these rivers. And it also has information about if it's a perennial or intermittent river, if it's navigable, etc. So now if I right click on that, open up properties, I'm going to go to my symbology tab again, and we'll go back to categories. And this time I'm going to hit unique values, but instead of using the name, I'm going to use the type and hit add all values. And you can see that it now shows intermittent and perennial data types separately. And I can change the symbols on for those categories. If I double click on it, I'll get the symbol selector. And you can notice here that it looks a little bit different than polygon or point symbol selector because this is for lines. And what I'm gonna do here is I can search. I'm gonna search for a stream. Now here's an intermittent stream. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna add that. And then for the perennial, I'm just gonna find a river symbol. And that looks pretty good. So you can search for symbols, hit apply. And now you can see on the map that we have a contrast, and it's actually kind of hard to see the intermittent streams. Their color is sort of very light, so you maybe want to go in there and maybe make the color a little bit bolder. And but you can really clearly see now where in the center of the continent, where there's a lot of rainfall, rainforest, the streams run year round, but then like in the Sahara and the Kalahari deserts, they run intermittently. So it really shows a difference in the climate. Now, if we go back to our data frame, you can see now that we have made 3 different maps. So now I'm going to move on and add another layer another data frame called wildlife. And this is and I'm going to activate that. Oops. And open that up. And you can see that right now it just has the countries layer. And so what I'm going to need to do is add some data. So if I hit add data here, I'm going to go to my data and going to add the animals shapefile here. And so this is a point feature class. And if I open up the attribute table here, you can see that each point represents a population of giraffes, zebras, or elephants. So this is kind of like a wildlife map. And if I hit properties, it's going to take me to Symbology tab again. And this time we're going to do categories, and we're going to do animal name and add all values. And you can see it's using the color ramp and it's using the default symbols. And if I hit apply here, you can it's still hard to distinguish one symbol from another, right? And so what I'm going to do here is double click on the elephant one, and I'm going to scroll down here. You can see that there's many symbols to select here. If I search for elephant, I don't think I'm going to find any here. Oh wait, I did find one. So this is under the conservation view. I'm actually surprised that I found this. So I just want to demonstrate that, like, if you don't find it, you can go to your style references here, and you'll find that there's a bunch of different sets of symbols available that you can load up. So here, I'm going to load up the conservation one here. It already loaded that elephant symbol, but that's what you would do if you couldn't find it. And then you can see it has a little symbol for an elephant, and we can modify it as well. So we can change the color here, make it kind of a light blue. And then you can change the size of the symbol as well. So in this case, maybe take it up just a hair. And I'll hit apply there. And so now you can see the elephant populations. We can do the same things with the other two. So again, here, I'm going to search for giraffe. I'm going to make it sort of a brownish color. Make it a little bit bigger too. And then finally, zebras. Now, it's beyond the scope of this lesson, but you can actually create your own symbols. So if you maybe you have a different animal on here that you can't find a symbol for, you can actually draw them and import them. And I'll let you explore that on your own. All right, so now we got a map that shows the different populations of the animals, and I think it's much more illustrative of how the animal populations are distributed around the continent. All right, moving along for the last example on manipulating symbology, I'm going to open up the atlas, and we have a topography data frame set up here. And this one's a little bit different because we are going to manipulate the symbology of some raster coverages. So all of the previous maps have dealt with shapefiles that were vector files. But here we're going to add some topography. So to do that, you can kind of see here, we have the Horn of Africa is highlighted, and I'm going to zoom up in on that area, and you can see that there's several layers here, city layer, rivers, roads. So we have kind of the context here, but we don't have any topography. So I'm going to have to add that. And I'm going to add this DEM, which is stands for digital elevation model, and the SHD, which is a shaded hill shade version of that. And when I add these, it says, hey, do you want to create pyramids? And you usually want to say yes. You say, well, what is a pyramid? Well, it's actually going to build a series of raster images that are scale dependent. And so when you're zoomed way out, you don't need a lot of detail. And when you're zoomed in, you do. And this building these pyramids will allow us to see that and save memory at the same time. So I'm just going to hit yes here. So it might take a little while to generate these, and it put them both into the table of contents, but they're underneath here. So I'm going to drag them up. So if I drag this first one, this is digital elevation model. I'm going to right click on that. Wait a second here. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to rename that to elevation. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the hillshade model. Just so it's easier to understand. And you can see here that these are raster coverages. There's elevation, there's hillshade. Okay. And these were provided to us. You can get these from the United States Geologic Survey, really for around the world. And you can see here that there's a low of -169 to a high of 5,825. So these are meters above or below sea level. And you can see that the lighter the color, the higher the elevation, and the darker the color, the lower the elevation. And so now what we want to kind of do here is first I'm going to zoom to this elevation layer so I can see the whole thing. And then I'm going to right click on it and get the properties. There we go. And then just like the shape files, the raster files have a symbology tab, but when you click on it, it looks quite a bit different. And so it comes up here as stretched. So this basically, it's stretching the color ramp. And again, you can change color ramps if you want to here, but it's stretching that color ramp from the low value to the high value. And we can manipulate all this, but I'm just going to accept the default here. And then I'm gonna right click on the color ramp, turn off the graphic view, and then I'm going to find my elevation number 1, and I'm going to apply that to this. And so you can see it's using a colored version to show the difference in elevation. I'm also going to go over here to display, and you can change the transparency of the display. I'm going to make it 70% transparent. And so now you can see that color has been sort of overlaid on the hillshade layer below there, and it makes for a nice visual representation of the elevation. I'm going to hit OK here. I'm going to go to bookmarks and go back to my close-up area, and I'm actually going to drag these down like so. So now my cities and the rivers and things are superimposed back on top of that, and it makes for a nice close-up of the kind of the Ethiopian highlands there. If we look once again at our atlas, you can see that the zoomed in view shows up here in the layout view. So that's, kind of gives you an overview on how to manipulate the symbology in ArcGIS. And, our next lesson, we're going to take this a step further where we actually try to classify some of the data while we're changing the symbology.